I am broken. Those three words slipped off Christine Brown's tongue, booming through the courtroom like thunderclap thunder, hitting every ear in the room. For an instant, the cacophonous chatter of the courtroom was suddenly gone, and a heavy silence, full of disbelief, settled in. People involuntarily leaned forward in their chairs, eyes wide, as they understood that something enormous was happening. This was not another quarrel or a regular family conflict. It was an eye-opener, a naked and uncensored look at the personal agony of a family millions of people had known for years from watching them on television. Christine sat in the witness stand, her hands shaking ever so slightly as she gripped the sides of the desk in front of her. Each movement was calculated, yet weak, as though she held herself in place with sheer determination. Her eyes sparkled with unshed tears, glinting in the cold court lighting, eyes that had seen decades of happiness, suffering, compromise, and heartache, but tonight saw years of pent-up sorrow. Her chest heaved and fell unevenly, as though every breath bore memories too burdensome to endure. At the far end of the room, Kody Brown stood frozen in observation, puzzlement carved into each crease of his face. Desperation blended with incredulity in his eyes, as if he were watching a stranger, an unknown Christine, the woman he believed he had grown to know all these years, yet now something foreign in her vulnerability. His fingers fidgeted at his sides, jaw clenched, and for the first time in years, he appeared uncertain, even helpless. "Why are you broken, Christine?" Kody's voice broke, a rare weakness creeping into his voice. "I thought we were a family. I thought we were okay." The judge's gavel came down once, hard, calling for order, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the charged room. The audience surged forward, eyes fixed on the couple. This was a reckoning moment. For the hundreds of observers in the gallery, and millions more at home, it was impossible not to feel the scale of the encounter. This wasn't simply a row about property, custody, or finances. It was an encounter with years of repressed feeling, broken relationships, and hidden truths finally emerging. Christine's voice cracked, but each word she uttered hit harder than any debate could. "You don't understand, Kody. You never did. All those years, deceiving, concealing. I'm not the bride you wedded anymore. I can't do this." Her words were deliberately selected, a combination of agony and restrained rage. Every syllable appeared to slice through the air, ghostly knives penetrating the walls of deception that had preserved their family for so long. A chilling silence lingered in the courtroom, following her statement, a moment of such intensity that even the soft scratch of pens on notebooks sounded amplified. People couldn't help but avert their eyes, sensing her grief, not wanting to intrude but unable to do otherwise. Whispers started to spread through the courtroom. Some were quiet, nearly unheard, like leaves rustling on a still day. Others were more obvious, full of shock and incredulity. Even the lawyer who represented Kody shifted in his seat. He was meant to be calm, assured, but even he could not help but be taken by the naked emotional reality presented before him. He had worked for hours crafting legal tactics, preparing arguments, going over words, but nothing could have prepared him for the raw honesty of Christine's testimony. The courtroom was filled with a combination of family, reporters, and onlookers, all of them completely knowing that they were present during a very unusual and personal unraveling. Leaning forward in their chairs, some could not help but be curious. Others gripped tissues in silence or covered their mouths with their hands, as if attempting to guard themselves from the emotional turmoil of the scene. Each eye appeared drawn magnetically to Christine, and yet Kody found himself also under the limelight, a man struggling with the magnitude of a reality beyond his control. Within the mind of Christine, a tempest raged, memories came tumbling in like ceaseless waves, laughter-filled moments, vows exchanged, hopes constructed on a foundation of trust that had long since dissolved. She remembered lying awake at night, questioning whether anyone really knew the extent of her desolation. She remembered years of faking smiles, of nodding along, of contorting herself into a life that no longer represented her own. And there she sat, today in the witness stand, as the pent-up emotions finally burst forth like a volcano, overrunning the courtroom in the guise of three short, shattering words. I am broken. Kody was confined in ICU. He had devoted decades to thinking he was the anchor, the glue that kept a scattered family intact. He had persuaded himself that love consisted of endurance, compromise, and at times subtle command. But the words Christine spoke broke that illusion, shattering the reality he had so long refused to see. His mind worked overtime, frantically searching for an answer, a means of repairing what seemed beyond repair. All his defenses, all his justifications, all his excuses learned over the years now seemed feeble, irrelevant in the face of Christine's exposure. The tension inside the courtroom grew almost tangible, as if it were a living thing bearing down on all in attendance. The atmosphere grew thick, heavy with emotion, as if the walls themselves were creaking under the burden of truth. Each individual in attendance, family members, attorneys, onlookers felt the weight of the moment. This was not merely a legal process. This was a matters of the heart accounting, a crashing together of years of concealed anguish, brought into the unforgiving light of reality. Christine went on, her voice building in power through the tears. For years I did what everyone thought they wanted me to do. I was the obedient wife, the loving mother, the cheerful family member. But behind the smiles, behind the nods, I was crumbling. And Kody, you never even saw it. You never cared to look. Her words lingered in the air, their gravity unavoidable. Even the judge, for all his impartiality and sternness, leaned forward a little, as if captivated by the human drama being enacted before him. There was no counter-argument to be made, no loophole in the law to be exploited. Only stark, unavoidable truth, bare to all eyes. The room fell silent once more. But this silence was not the same. It was heavy, dense, almost choking. It brought with it an air of inevitability, the understanding that certain things could not be reversed, that certain things could not be denied. All eyes in the courtroom appeared to be locked on Christine, not in judgment, but in understanding, comprehension that here was a woman telling her truth, however painful, however disruptive, however shattering it could be to the well-ordered world around her. For Kody, the silence was deafening. He opened his mouth to speak, to defend, to explain, but no words emerged. There was only the echo of "I am broken" resonating within his head, rattling the very foundations of the life he believed he knew. His world, built, stone by stone, seemed to collapse around him, not due to scandal or betrayal, but because someone he loved, someone he had sworn to shield, was finally speaking the truth. Christine's last words in the instant were soft but forceful. I can't keep doing this. I am not the woman you wedded. I am not the individual you believed you knew. And I am shattered. The courtroom was holding its breath collectively. Everyone knew that what was unfolding was not merely testimony. It was a reckoning, a turning point, a moment that would make forever differ in the course of their lives. And as tears dripped down Christine's face, shining under the cold lights of the courtroom, it became agonizingly apparent. The family that had been seen by millions on TV, the family that had appeared to be solid and together, had been keeping secrets so fundamental. No one, not even Kody, could have realized them until today. Kody Brown stood up from his chair, the smooth wood of the courtroom floor groaning under his bulk. His stance, normally straight and authoritative, was rigid with tension. For the first time in decades, the confident aura of control that had been his hallmark showed a crack. All eyes in the room were trained on him. Cameramen panned in, recording every change of expression that flitted across his features. Reporters wrote wildly in their notebooks. He parted his lips to utter words, but for an instant, there was only silence, silence with the echoes of Christine's heartbreaking words. I did everything I could. Kody's voice quavered, revealing the desperation he'd worked so hard to conceal all these years. I tried to keep this family together. I worked, I sacrificed, I kept everyone safe. He swept his arm wide, as if the courthouse walls themselves could bear witness to his efforts. Isn't that what you wanted? Isn't that what we all wanted? The words hung in the air, thick with frustration and incredulity. Kody's hands shook ever so slightly, a microscopic tremor that betrayed the turmoil working inside him. He was attempting to persuade not just Christine, but himself, that he had done enough, that love had a metric by which it could be measured: endurance, appearances. Christine sat, her gaze pinned on him. Her tears had faded, but the embers they left behind were evident. "You didn't hold me, Kody," she informed him, speaking in a firm tone now, each word tinged with a cutting quality. "You didn't hold any of us. You were so caught up in controlling, so caught up in pretending, that you forgot what it meant to love for real. And now, I'm finished." Her words pierced Kody's defenses like a blade. There was a moment when he seemed about to collapse, as though the floor under his feet had shifted. The courtroom closed in around them, all eyes riveted on the drama unfolding. Family members wriggled uncomfortably in their seats. Even the lawyers, who were used to high-intensity legal wars, found themselves drawn into the power of the emotional battle. Meri, a few rows back from Christine, felt her breast constrict. She had always been aware of the cracks within the family, the silent moments of desperation concealed behind grins and shared meals. Robyn clasped her hands tightly in her lap, attempting to keep herself together, but her fingers betrayed the tension she could not keep at bay. Janelle's gaze was upon Kody, sorrow and suppressed anger burning beneath her serene surface. They all had felt it, through the years, the claustrophobic weight of Kody's domination, emotional safety imperceptibly worn away. And now Christine had spoken what they had all endured in silence. Kody's voice broke, a glimmer of uncertainty piercing the veneer of certainty he had constructed for himself. "I didn't know you felt like this," he said, his own voice barely more than a whisper. I thought we were fine. I thought I was being right." Christine leaned forward, her voice cooling, sharpening. "The right thing? You refer to this as the right thing? Living in a house where no one's voice was heard but yours, playing perfect while all of us silently shattered within. That's not safety, Kody. That's control masquerading as care." The courtroom held its collective breath. Some leaned in, mouths agape, as if desperately attempting to hear every syllable. Others hid behind hands, unable to bear watching, but unable to turn away. The air was thick with tension, a palpable weight hanging over every head. Even the judge, fabled for her fairness and control, hesitated, drinking in the emotional significance of the moment. Kody's mind was racing. He thought back over the years, the holidays, the dinners, the celebrations, and still Christine's words gnawed at him. Had he actually missed everything? Had his efforts at keeping peace been simply a facade, a thin veneer that disintegrated the moment the truth was expressed out loud? For years he had held that love was endurance. Now he was compelled to wonder at the cornerstone of his existence. Christine did not flinch. "You think you did everything? You think sacrifices and appearances are enough? Love isn't control, Kody. It's not keeping score. It's not suggesting that silence equals peace. It's seeing the cracks, respecting the pain, and being there when your family hurts most." Her words appeared to echo all over the courtroom. Some onlookers murmured to one another, instinctively nodding, recognizing the seriousness of what was being revealed. Others sat transfixed, held by the weight of emotions. Christine's vulnerability had become unmitigated strength, a power that would not be overlooked or underestimated. Kody's face went taut, his fingers wrapped around the lip of the desk in front of him. For what felt like a long minute, he did not speak, as if the room itself was standing mute, anticipating his next words. He wanted to justify, to explain, to defend himself. But Christine's unblinking gaze informed him that no explanation would reverse the wounds that had been done for decades of misinterpretation and neglect. "Do you think I don't know about sacrifice?" Kody finally spoke, his tone deeper, more contained but still frayed with desperation. "I've sacrificed my life for this family. For all of you, I've worked non-stop, tried to hold us together. Is that worth anything?" Christine's response was serene, measured and mercilessly accurate. "Worth something, perhaps, but not enough, Kody. Not when everyone in this is made to feel invisible, unheard and broken. You can't quantify love by acts alone. You can't purchase loyalty or respect. You can't construct a family on the bedrock of control and hope it lasts." Meri, Robyn, and Janelle looked at each other. Nobody said a word, but there was no mistaking the unspoken acknowledgement between them. Christine was saying what they all knew. They had lived it, quietly for so long, and now here it was, out there, irrefutable and unstoppable to deny. The courtroom appeared to shrink in even closer, the air heavy with tension and unspoken feeling. Kody's shoulders lowered a fraction, weighed down by realization. He had thought that his work defined his love, that dedication and control meant care. But Christine's words destroyed that. The reality was harsh, unyielding and bitterly apparent. He had not recognized the emotional requirements of the people he loved most. Christine's voice dipped to a gentler tone, though the flame was still there. I'm not mad anymore, Kody. Not the way you might be thinking. I'm just finished. Finished pretending that everything is okay. Finished pretending that silence is peace. Finished pretending that I can keep going in a life where my voice doesn't count. I am leaving that behind, and I am reclaiming myself. The courtroom was quiet again, but the quiet was different this time. It was not the stunned quiet of the initial revelation, nor the awkward quiet of Warren's interrogation. It was the quiet of understanding, the know that a turning point had been reached. Kody's defenses, no matter how diligently crafted, could no longer hold. He had been confronted, not with rage, not with accusation, but with truth. The kind of truth that required admission, contemplation, and finally transformation. And as Christine sat back, her tears gradually diminishing, the courtroom came to realize something significant. The fight was not one of winning or losing, of right or wrong. It was about the acknowledgement that love, family, and devotion could not be sustained by looks alone. It needed presence, compassion, and the fortitude to deal with agony buried too long. Kody's eyes locked with hers one last time, a combination of regret, sadness, and powerlessness, staring back at her. Finally, for the first time, he realized the full extent of what was lost. Not only the pretense of family harmony, but the trust, the love, and the emotional bond that could never be regained. And in that moment, the courtroom witnessed a truth, both shattering and freeing. Christine was no longer merely a wife, no longer merely a mother, no longer merely a character in someone else's story. She was an instrument of truth, unshattered in her vulnerability, and unstoppered in her quest for freedom. The air in the courtroom was charged with anticipation. Following Christine's emotional testimony, and Kody's adamant denial, the room waited with bated breath for the next tide of truth to break over all who sat there. Now it was time for the others, Meri, Robyn, and Janelle, to have their say, to express the years of anguish and heartache they had silently suffered. Meri was summoned to the stand first. Her footsteps were slow, hesitant, each one ringing ominously against the smooth wooden floor. She stood before the witness stand, cast a look of empathy and solidarity toward Christine, and sat down. The courtroom closed in around her, its walls seeming to press in, as they knew the emotional burden she bore. I've loved this family, Meri started, her voice shaking lightly, but resolute. I've attempted to forgive and forget, to have faith in the promises we were promised, to cling for the children's sake, for the sake of what I believed was love. She paused, glancing down at her folded hands. The silence was deafening. Kody shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He had always believed that his sacrifices and control were for the good of the family, but Meri's words struck a chord he had long ignored. The truth is, Meri went on, her voice strengthening, the family Kody vowed to us never really existed. We were all existing, not living. Every holiday, every dinner, every smile, it was in a state of secrecy, and that secrecy, he had destroyed us. Little by little, the onlookers in the courtroom huddled forward. Some nodded, others murmured softly to one another. The effective burden was palpable. Reporters frantically scribbled, attempting to write down every statement. Each individual in attendance could sense the years of pent-up emotion that were now flooding the room, unbridled and uncensored. Then Robyn was summoned. She walked forward with calculated strides, her impassive face concealing the tempest within. She took her seat, back straight and controlled, but her hands flickered ever so slightly, betraying the tension she was holding. Then I remained. Robyn started, her voice low but firm. Because I was convinced about love. I was convinced that things can heal, that hearts can mend, that family can persevere even the widest cracks. I hoped that by remaining, I could mend what was broken. Her gaze locked with Christine's for a split second, a wordless recognition of the mutual pain that united them. But Christine was right. We've all been broken in our own ways. And for too long, we pretended that everything was okay. We pretended that silence was peace, when really it was pain, growing stronger with every passing day. The whispers in the courtroom grew louder. Even the judge, normally reserved and unemotional, leaned forward slightly, mesmerized by the testimony. Each word Robyn spoke seemed to have a ring of truth, with a depth of feeling that could not be denied. Janelle stepped forward last, the calmest one of them all. She had always been the voice of reason, the rock in the storm. But as she walked to the stand, there was a suppressed tension in her shoulders, a fragility that had been infrequent. She hesitated, took a deep breath, and started to speak. I thought in Kody, Janelle confessed, her tone low, but full of the weight of years. I really did. I thought that he was doing the right thing for the family. But believing in someone does not cure neglect. Believing in someone does not mend wounds that get glossed over. And believing in someone doesn't make them realize what pain they inflict. Her eyes darted towards Kody, a blend of sadness and contained fury that shone through. We existed in the shadow of choices we never had the opportunity to make, of things we couldn't say, of love that was conditional and picky. And for all these years, we endured in silence, praying that one day, someone would see. The courtroom fell silent now, the sort of silence that heaps with it the years of pain long at last validated. Even Kody was left speechless for a moment, faced with the aggregate reality of not one, but three women who had survived the emotional damage of his decisions. Christine sat, hands folding on the desk. In front of her, she had opened her mouth first, but now her sisters in arms were repeating what she had said, underlining the irrefutable fact. Kody had failed them all. Testimony upon testimony stacked upon each other, weaving a quilt of betrayal and heartbreak that could no longer be silenced or dismissed. For the onlookers, the experience was overpowering. The emotional charge was unprecedented. This wasn't merely courtroom theater. It was an insight into the human condition, a raw, unvarnished examination of love, of neglect, of control, and of resilience. Individuals leaned in, some clenching their lips to prevent themselves from crying, others talking softly to the person beside them, bathing in the shared devastation. Kody's thoughts reeled. He always thought his choices, his authority, his sacrifices, were the anchor keeping the family intact. But when Meri, Robyn and Janelle were talking, he started noticing the cracks that had been swept under the rug. The pretense of togetherness he had created was only a tenuous fiction, one which had incrementally dissipated under the pressure of silence and unexpressed hurt. The statements were not simply recalling old grievances. They were illuminating a pattern of neglect, of emotional absence, of control masquerading as care. Each woman, in her own words, stripped away the veil to disclose the concealed price of living under the pretense of family harmony. The audience felt the intensity, the raw vulnerability, the heartbreak, and the bravery it took to utter these truths into the air. Meri's voice trembled once more, but her determination stood firm. We didn't do this to harm anyone. We remained, because we believed, because we loved, because we hoped. But hope isn't enough when the ground is shattered. Christine was courageous enough to tell the truth. And now we are too. Robyn nodded, her eyes unwavering. It's not about revenge. It's about being heard. It's about being seen. And tonight, in this courtroom, for the first time in decades, we are all being heard. Janelle's voice was softer, yet imbued with a silent strength. This is not Christine's alone. It's ours. It's the tale of every silenced voice, every unshared pain, every whispered tear in secret. And it's seeing the light now. The courtroom paused, as if holding its breath, as the gravity of the testimonies caught up. This was not a family squabble played out in the public eye. This was an emotional accounting, a confrontation of decades of unspoken reality. Every member of the audience, every reporter, every member of the family felt the enormity of what was occurring. Kody sat in stunned silence. The words of Meri, Robyn, and Janelle were not accusations. They were revelations. They revealed the cost of neglect, the weight of control, the impact of silence, and for the first time, Kody could see the full scope of the damage, not just to Christine, but to the entire family. Christine observed him, her face peaceful but firm. She had told her truth to begin with. But now the collective voices of the women standing there supported the irrefutable fact. The family he believed he held in his grasp was shattered, and nothing could mend it. The courtroom was still once more, but the stillness was different. It had with it understanding, recognition, and the beginnings of accountability. Kody's denials had collapsed under the weight of numerous truths, each stronger than the previous one. And for Christine, Meri, Robyn, and Janelle, this was not just justice. It was validation, freedom, and the start of a new era. The courtroom appeared to throb with tension, each beat sounding like a drum, as Kody Brown stood at its center, finally confronted with the full brunt of what had been revealed. The testimonies of Meri, Robyn, and Janelle had buffeted him like thunder, leaving him shaky, his customary poise broken. He breathed in deeply, trying to call up authority, trying to regain the control he had long thought was his birthright. "I didn't know you felt this way," Kody said, his voice low, almost unsteady. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was keeping us safe. I thought I was protecting everyone." Christine's eyes narrowed, not with rage, but with a biting intensity that caused Kody to flinch. She leaned in a little, her hands planted firmly on the surface of the desk in front of her, her voice even but tinged with pain. "Safe?" she repeated, the single word infusing years of hurt and incredulity. "You call this safe? Living in a house where everyone else's voice did not count but yours, faking like everything was okay, while all of us quietly shattered inside." The courtroom was still, as if each statement she made was a stone dropped into a quiet pond, shooting ripples of truth into each and every onlooker. Reporters wrote with frantic intensity. The judge leaned forward, interested but wary, feeling the depth of this confrontation. Each and every spectator was holding their breath, aware that they were watching not merely testimony, but an accounting. "That's not safety, Kody," Christine went on, her voice intensifying with each sentence. "That's control masquerading as care. You don't see the family you say you love. You see the picture that you need to preserve. And for 40 years, that picture has cost the price of each of us." Kody's jaw clenched, his fists curled at his sides. All his life, he had thought that discipline, order, and sacrifice added up to care. But Christine's words left that notion bare. For the first time, he faced the truth that his work, his diligence, his management, his so-called protection, had created emotional cracks too profound to deny. "I did it all for this family," Kody exclaimed, his voice going up in desperation. But it wasn't as confident as usual. "I made sacrifices. I worked myself to death. I thought I was keeping us all together." Christine's face softened for a split second, but her words were as sharp as a knife. "And see where that left us, Kody. Sacrifice without compassion is worthless. Hard work without being present is nothing. Power without comprehension is brutality. We are all fragmented, and you can't repair it with words, no matter how many you utter now." The whispers in the courtroom grew. Onlookers craned forward, mesmerized. This was not a battle over worldly goods or guardianship. It was a visceral struggle over love, abandonment, and responsibility. The tension was palpable, a pressure bearing down on every single individual in the room. Kody mind racing. He remembered holidays past, birthdays celebrated in ritual but not warmth. He remembered nights when Christine's eyes had held unspoken anguish, and he hadn't seen. He remembered the polite, public facades of Meri, Robyn, and Janelle, all covering the private pain. And now, here all that omission, All those failure. All those neglectful moments laid bare. You think I don't know what sacrifice is? Kody demanded, his voice breaking a little. Anger and desperation swimming together. I've sacrificed my life for this family. Isn't that worth something? Christine's response was calm, measured, and scathingly accurate. Worth something perhaps, but it's not enough, Kody. Not when all parties feel invisible, unheard, and shattered. You can't quantify love in terms of action alone. You can't purchase loyalty or respect. And you can't keep a family afloat by ignoring pain. The room was filled with a thick silence. The authority, long unexamined, of Kody was disintegrating under the pressure of incontestable fact. For decades, he had been the voice of restraint, the conductor of family existence, but now was faced with the repercussions of the emotional deficits he had turned a blind eye to. Christine's tone gentled, but not weakened. I am not here to destroy you, Kody. I am here to speak the truth. I am here to demonstrate to you, and to everyone who is watching, that control disguised as care will always lose. That acting like everything is okay doesn't mend what is broken within, and that sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is walk away from what no longer serves you. Her words echoed throughout the courtroom. The audience was transfixed. Even the judge appeared taken aback for an instant by the emotional weight of the exchange. For the first time, Kody's mask of control was breached by the combined reality of the people around him. Kody's shoulders sagged, a combination of frustration, remorse, and powerlessness consuming him. He had always imagined that leadership, discipline, and management formed the basis of family existence. But Christine's words revealed a reality, which he had long closed his eyes to. That emotional abandonment, even if inadvertent, could break lives as effectively as infidelity. Christine went on, her voice unshakable. You can't make people love what they want to love. You can't control love. You can't pretend to guard while turning a blind eye to the very ones you promised to love. And now, we are all here, looking at each other for the first time in decades. Really seeing each other, and that you cannot take back. The court held its collective breath. Each sentence Christine uttered was a knife, slicing through years of pretense, laying bare the open, unhealed wounds that had been hidden behind rituals and appearances. Kody's familiar counters, arguing, explaining, controlling the narrative, were useless against the strength of truth. He let his mouth fall open once more, hoping for words, hoping to find some measure of control. But reality weighed him down and forced him silent. Christine's eyes locked into him, firm, unyielding, and in them he saw the cost of his actions, not only his own, but those of each person he had not really looked at or listened to. Christine's last words during that standoff were subdued but unforgettable. I am broken, yes. But being broken doesn't mean I am defeated, and neither does it mean love, hope, or family are lost forever. It only means that I am choosing to accept the truth, to take back my voice, and to step into the life that I deserve. Whether you get it or not, Kody, that is my choice. And it is mine alone. The gavel came down once, loudly, shattering the tension like lightning shattering a tempest-torn sky. The courtroom gasped, the gravity of the confrontation settling over all of them like a heavy shroud. Kody slowly sat down, pale and unmoving, finally being confronted with a truth he could no longer deny. Christine had testified, the women had told their stories, and the room had seen the falling of a facade that had stood for far too long. In that instant, the showdown was over, but the residue remained. For Kody, it was a moment of truth. For Christine, it was freedom. And for all of us witnessing it, it was a timely reminder: truth once told cannot be silenced, no matter how intricately a life has been staged upon pretenses. The courtroom hummed with whispers and rumor, reporters hunched over microphones, cameras recording every move, viewers at home riveted to their screens. But for Christine, there was peace, strength in her gaze, a stillness of conviction that she had at last claimed herself amidst chaos, and that no one, not even Kody, could deprive her of that. The courtroom was thick with silence, the type of silence that follows a storm. Christine Brown stood up from her chair, each movement controlled, exuding strength and quiet resolve that was a far cry from the raw emotion she had unleashed hours before. Her voice, which had been shaking with anguish, now held a firm authority that brooked no defiance. "Broken?" she whispered softly, perhaps reiterating the statement she had made at the beginning of the proceedings. "Broken, yes. But broken does not denote defeat. Broken does not denote powerlessness. Broken means I am human, and I am ready at last to take back my life." Kody Brown remained in shocked silence, his pale face unshaven, a tangled web of regret, powerlessness, and incredulity inscribed upon his face. He had never felt small before, not after all these years, with control wrapped tightly around his fingers. His carefully crafted facade had disintegrated under the dual strength of Christine's speech and the testimonies of Meri, Robyn, and Janelle. Christine's eyes scanned the courtroom, resting for a moment on each face there: the judge, the lawyers, the family members, the reporters, and the witnesses. She sensed their shared consciousness, their knowledge that what was taking place was not simply a legal trial, but a compelling human drama. And in that instant, she knew the full significance of her bravery. She had told the truth, and the world had heard her. "Today," Christine continued, her voice growing stronger, "is not about revenge. It's not about punishment. It's about acknowledgement. It's about seeing what was hidden, speaking what was silenced, and stepping forward even when it feels impossible." Meri, Robyn, and Janelle stood in silence, their own faces a blend of relief and pride. They had all endured the same battles, tolerated the same emotional abandonment, and struggled through the same webs of control. And here, standing collectively, they witnessed a truth long denied. The women had spoken, not to vanquish, but to set free. And in doing so, they turned the courtroom into an arena of empowerment. Kody's voice, when he finally spoke, was very quiet. "I don't know what to say." Christine gazed at him straight on, her stare unflinching. "There are no words to heal this, Kody, no apology to rebuild what has been forsaken for generations. This isn't about guilt anymore. It's about reality. And the reality is that I am taking back my life. I am taking back my voice. I am choosing to move on, even if you can't comprehend it." Her words reverberated through the courtroom. Reporters leaned forward, capturing every syllable, while spectators held their breath, caught in the intensity of the moment. Even the judge, who had witnessed countless emotional cases over the years, appeared momentarily moved, recognizing the magnitude of what had transpired. Christine's voice was soft, but it was also unyielding. "I am free, not because someone gave their permission, but because I am taking it for myself. Freedom is not given, it is taken. And today I take it." The gavel came down once, marking the official close of proceedings. But the emotional aftershocks would last much, much longer. Kody leaned back in his chair, looking at Christine with an inscrutable face, at last compelled to confront the outcome of his actions, or lack thereof. The years of domination, the facade of power, the struggles to uphold a perfect image, none of it had resulted in this moment of accountability. Christine made her way slowly towards the courtroom door. The steps were slow, careful, each one weighed down by the weight of the years behind her, and the strength that now lay ahead. She didn't glance over her shoulder. She didn't have to. The force of her freedom was in the doing of it, in closing off that which no longer worked for her, and moving into the life she had been yearning for. Outside the courtroom, the world held its breath. Cameras popped, reporters hushed, fans and spectators at home waited with bated breath for every morsel of news, awed by the strength and determination they had seen. Christine had not only exited a courtroom, she had left decades of stifling fear and emotional abandonment behind. She had emerged broken, indeed, but also invincible, unbreakable, and free. Within, the family stayed. Kody's face was a blend of shock and contemplation. Meri, Robyn, and Janelle looked at each other, with silent understanding of the strength of truth, the need to utter it, and the freedom that could result. This trial had not been a court proceeding. It had been a crucible, smelting away pretense, revealing reality, and leaving only the essence of human endurance. Christine's last words, softly spoken to herself, but heard clearly by all present, hung in the air like a mantra. Being broken does not define me, silence does not bind me, and control does not dictate my life anymore. For the audience, the press, and the millions in their homes, Christine's tale was no longer just a family saga. It was a lesson in valor, a tribute to the strength of truth, and a reminder that liberty, though difficultly earned, is ever accessible to those with the courage to reach for it. And as the courtroom cleared, cameras still rolling, and the murmurs dying into the stillness, one inescapable reality remained. Christine Brown was no longer merely a figure in a TV family drama. She was a woman reclaimed, a voice amplified, a force unstoppable. Kody, alone in the vacating courtroom, was left to sit with the burden of his decisions. No answers, no simple solutions, only the reverberation of truth, and the inescapable understanding that some words once uttered cannot be taken back. Christine had come out of the storm, battered but liberated, having left behind not only a man, but a life that did not suit her soul anymore. And by doing so, she was the definition of courage, living testimonial to the fact that the human spirit, after all those years of abuse and domination, can rise, speak, and reclaim its destiny. The courtroom doors shut behind her. The last gavel sounded distantly, and beyond, the world awaited to see her next act. A chapter marked not by control, pretense, or silence, but truth, strength, and freedom.